Welcome back to the deep dive. For years, the story of advancing large language models has felt, well, almost exclusively focused on compute. This relentless march of FLOPs doubling every few months.
It has.
But the stack of research you sent us today confirms a pretty profound shift. While computational power continues its rapid scaling, it seems high-quality, unique data is fast becoming the single most crucial bottleneck.
We are running out of good things to show the models.
So that scarcity, it fundamentally changes the whole equation for researchers.
It does. It forces us to ask a really difficult technical question for this next phase of development. When data is your primary constraint, which modeling paradigm is better at extracting the most signal from every single token?
Is it the standard autoregressive approach or these emerging diffusion language models?
And that's the central question.
And the answer, which is the core finding of this deep dive, is genuinely counterintuitive. Under these controlled conditions where unique data is limited, we see what the researchers are calling the intelligence crossover.
The crossover.
Diffusion language models consistently and robustly surpass their autoregressive counterparts in performance.
So our mission today is to pull apart the evidence for this phenomenon, dissect the mechanics, the three compounding factors that let DLMs become what they call super data learners, and really understand what this reveals about the limits of our current models.
Okay, so let's set the stage with the incumbent. Autoregressive models, or AR, have been the undisputed champion. They're the foundational recipe behind every modern LLM we use.
Absolutely. The AR architecture is incredibly effective. It relies on something called causal factorization.
Meaning it predicts the next token based strictly on the tokens that came before it.
Right, left to right. And during training, it uses teacher forcing, so it always knows the correct next token. This design has huge traditional strengths.
Like what?
High training efficiency, for one, a great signal-to-FLOPs ratio, and it also allows for incredibly efficient serving or inference through things like streaming generation and KV caching.
It's the standard for a reason. It's optimized and it works.
It works very well.
But the research points out that those strengths were really optimized for a world where we had these massive, ever-growing corpora.
A world of abundant data.
And now that we're hitting the limits of truly high-quality, unique data, models are increasingly forced to repeat existing tokens, sometimes hundreds of times.
And that's the critical point of rupture. AR's efficiency, which is great when data is abundant, it starts to break down when data gets scarce. This data-bound regime is where we see the AR model's advantage just get overwhelmed by the deeper learning potential of diffusion language models.
So the DLM just knows how to study the same limited textbook much more effectively.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's move from the theory and really anchor this in the evidence.
Yeah.
What does the intelligence crossover actually look like in the experiments?
Okay, so the crossover happens when you fix the total training compute. That's the overall number of tokens the model sees, including all the repetitions. But you severely restrict the number of unique tokens available.
And in those controlled settings?
In those settings, the DLMs consistently and substantially outperform the AR models.
And when you say substantially, the research puts a number on that gain, right?
It does. They found DLMs achieve roughly more than 3 times the effective data efficiency.
3 times?
To give you a concrete example, a DLM trained on just 500 million unique tokens. It achieved performance comparable to an AR model that needed 3 times that 1.5 billion unique tokens to get to the same point.
So it's extracting 3 times the useful information from the same input. It's a powerful headline, but does it hold up? Is it consistent across different model sizes?
It is, which suggests this isn't some architectural fluke. The crossover persists robustly from smaller 1 billion parameter models all the way up to large 8 billion parameter models.
And it holds for different architectures too, like dense versus sparse models.
That's right. It holds true whether you're using a standard dense transformer or a sparse mixture of experts model.
And we also have evidence that this scales into really high-stakes domains, like code generation.
We do. The researchers trained a 1.7 billion parameter DLM for code, using a budget of about 1.5 trillion total training tokens. But, and this is the key, it was on a relatively modest 10 billion unique Python tokens.
And the result?
That diffusion coder achieved performance parity with state-of-the-art AR code models that historically need trillions of unique tokens. The data advantage is very real.
Now we get to the heart of it. Why is this happening? Why, when forced to reread the same limited information, do DLMs suddenly become these superior learners? The research isolates 3 compounding factors. Let's tackle the first one. any order modeling.
Right. So the difference is in what's called the inductive bias. AR models impose a strict causal bias.
Hmm.
They're fundamentally trained to predict the next word, given the words before it. It's strictly sequential.
Left to right.
Always. DLMs, because of their diffusion objective, they just relax this bias entirely. They use bidirectional attention, and they're trained to denoise a corrupted sequence, not just predict what comes next.
That sounds conceptually much more flexible. What does that flexibility actually mean for how much a model learns from a single sentence?
It dramatically increases the learning space. So imagine you have an input sequence of length L.
Okay.
An AR model learns from L sequence prefixes. It learns to predict the second token, then the third, and so on. That's L learning examples.
Makes sense.
A DLM, though, can corrupt that same input of length L into up to 2 to the power of L different informative variants through all its noise and masking.
So you're saying it goes from L examples to an exponential number of examples from the same sentence.
It's a combinatorial expansion of the learning space that is crucial when you only have a few unique sequences to start with.
Yeah, so it's like the DLM gets to see the global dependencies in practice, filling in arbitrary gaps over and over again, extracting a much richer context.
A much richer context about the relationship between all the tokens, not just the one that comes next.
Okay, the second factor is super dense compute. And this seems to be where the major trade-off really emerges. DLMs need more computational power to pull this off.
That's right. They use substantially more FLOPs, both during training and, importantly, during inference.
Oh.
It's through a process of iterative bidirectional denoising or temporal refinement. They don't generate text in one go like an AR model. They have to refine the whole sequence over several steps, which just demands more computational density.
The numbers here are pretty eye-opening. The preliminary experiments suggest diffusion models need at least about 2 orders of magnitude. So more than 100 times more FLOPs than AR models to reach their optimal performance.
100 times. It completely flips the historical economics of LLMs on its head.
This finding really crystallizes the core trade-off then. DLMs are exchanging low data volume for high compute volume.
That's the choice.
But if the goal is to reach frontier capabilities, and we're already hitting limits on global compute resources, doesn't demanding 100 times more FLOPs just replace one scarce resource, data, with another hyper-expensive one, compute?
That is the essential constraint that developers have to grapple with. This research is showing us the theoretical maximum potential, the highest efficiency you can get per token, regardless of the cost.
So it's a calculation of data scarcity versus dollar cost.
It is. Whether the industry can absorb that 100x cost increase to get those data efficiency gains will ultimately determine how feasible these models are at the extreme scale.
Okay, that brings us to the third factor driving these gains: richer Monte Carlo augmentation.
This one links directly back to the DLM's fundamental objective. The diffusion objective explicitly requires the model to average its loss across all possible masking configurations and all the time steps of the denoising process.
So the data repetition is baked right into the loss function itself.
It is. Every unique data point is instantly transformed into a multitude of noisy variants for the model to train on.
The researchers tried to give AR models a similar advantage by injecting noise.
Yeah.
Right? Using random masking or dropout. Did that help?
It did. It gave a marginal performance boost for the AR models in that data-scarce environment. So noise injection does help them use limited data better.
But it wasn't enough.
No. They found that even the most optimized noise configurations for AR models couldn't fully close that substantial performance gap with the DLMs. The inherent richness of the DLM objective just provides a unique advantage.
Let's look at how this intelligence crossover shifts depending on other variables, like data quality or model size.
The timing of the crossover is very sensitive to data. If you have more unique data available, or if the data you have is of a higher quality, the crossover shifts later.
Which suggests AR models are more sensitive to quality variations. If the data is pristine, their efficiency can hold out a bit longer.
Right, before the DLM takes the lead.
And what about model size? Does a larger AR model, say, going from 1 billion to 8 billion parameters, help it hold the line?
Actually, it's the opposite. The crossover shifts earlier with larger models.
Why is that?
Because the AR model's efficiency works against it in a constrained setting. A larger AR model quickly saturates the limited unique data, and you see sharply diminishing returns.
Meanwhile, the DLMs
accelerate their learning as they scale up. They just keep getting better and consistently widen that performance gap.
The data efficiency they saw in the DLMs under these conditions is pretty remarkable.
It is. Consider this. A 1 billion parameter DLM was trained for 480 epochs on only 1 billion unique tokens.
480 times through the same data.
An extreme amount of repetition. Despite that, the model achieved 56% accuracy on HellaSwag and 33% on MMLU, significantly outperforming the AR models under the same constraint. And, crucially, it showed no signs of performance saturation. It just kept learning.
This brings us to a really important diagnostic finding from the research, a sort of methodological pitfall. The common sign of overfitting, a rising validation loss, doesn't necessarily mean downstream performance is getting worse.
This is maybe the most complex but important point. In standard AR training, when your validation loss starts to go up, you stop. You assume the model is just memorizing things.
But that's not what they found.
No, they found that even as the absolute validation loss rose, the model's ability to perform on benchmarks continued to improve.
Why is there a paradox there? If the model is overfitting and the loss is rising, shouldn't its accuracy suffer?
It comes down to how we measure loss versus how we measure benchmarks. Validation loss is an absolute negative log likelihood, or NLL.
Okay.
When a model gets extremely confident from seeing data so many times, it might assign a very high probability and thus a high NLL to all tokens, including the correct ones. That makes the overall validation loss go up.
But downstream accuracy, especially on multiple choice tasks, depends on comparing the relative NLLs.
That's it. It's about the difference between the ground truth option and the average NLL of all the incorrect options.
I see. So even while the absolute loss increases, the gap between the NLL of the correct answer and the NLL of the incorrect answers, that gap continues to widen.
It does. And that widening gap reflects continuous improvement in the model's underlying discriminative ability. It's getting better at telling the right answer from the distractors, even if its general confidence is getting a bit inflated.
That's a key correction for anyone training in a data-constrained regime. The evidence here is compelling that diffusion language models offer a powerful alternative.
The core conclusion is really undeniable. DLMs represent a highly compelling paradigm for maximizing frontier capability per unit of unique data, especially as high-quality tokens become the industry's scarcest resource.
But we have to return to the trade-off. This superior data efficiency comes at a significant cost. DLMs intentionally sacrifice computational efficiency, requiring orders of magnitude more FLOPs for both training and inference.
It's an intentional architectural choice. The industry now has to decide if the diminishing returns on high-quality data justify that staggering computational expense. And here's something for you to consider. While this crossover is robust, the researchers also noted that the precise timing of when DLMs surpass AR models can be sensitive to how you evaluate them.
What do you mean?
Specifically, whether you use a 3-shot or a 0-shot setting on the benchmarks. This suggests that the benefits of DLMs might show up differently depending on how carefully we probe their 0-shot capabilities versus their in-context learning abilities.